Are you a writer whose mind is a whirlwind of creativity and distraction? Hello, and welcome to Writing While Distracted, the writing podcast that helps you transform your scattered thoughts into literary brilliance. I'm Brenda Murphy, your NeuroSpicy writing coach. For writers of all kinds, but particularly those dealing with distraction and mental health issues, this podcast will offer positive advice for staying focused amidst the chaos of your mind, along with tips to help you find your story's beginning and use your strengths to get to the end of your novel. Because here, creativity thrives in the midst of chaos. Stay tuned as we talk about character creation and how it influences our fiction. Creating characters for our fiction is one of the most fun, complex, and sometimes terrifying writing tasks. Every writer has their method of character creation. Some use a checklist or a list of questions to interrogate their characters. Others write out elaborate backstories and long histories of their characters' lives. At the heart of every story are characters. And character growth drives every bit of fiction, no matter what kind of novel you're writing. Even those stories that rely on more detailed plots depend on their characters' reactions, inactions, actions, and behaviors to move the story along. So what is the terrifying part of character development? Getting it right. We must work to have our characters' behavior ring true. Character creation, the heart of storytelling, is the one thing most likely to keep me up at night, worrying if I got it wrong. What does it mean to get a character wrong? I know that I'm not alone, and there have been times I'm reading a book or watching a film, and one of the characters does something so beyond their nature that you close the book or turn the movie off because they've jumped the shark. And now the beautiful bubble, that suspension of belief that keeps you reading or keeps you watching, is broken. And you're left muttering to yourself, what the heck was that about? And what about writing characters outside our lived experiences? What are the key things we need to know about our characters to prevent our readers from closing the book and wondering what the heck we were talking about? Fear of getting characters wrong stops many new writers cold. They get so twisted worrying about how their characters will be received that they give themselves a massive case of writer's block. And this is a pro tip from me. If you write contemporary fiction, folks will often assume the characters you create are based on people you know or yourself. And this is also part of our fear. We often use elements of ourselves in creating characters, even if we are not conscious of it at the time. We worry that we will reveal too much of ourselves, or that others will see themselves in our characters and be really angry. The cure for this is to write it anyway. Portray your characters as honestly as possible. Don't be afraid to create characters who differ from you in gender identity, race, or culture. Do your research. Conduct interviews and work with sensitivity readers when you're creating characters that are outside your lived experiences. And this is how you create relatable characters. Pay your sensitivity readers. Pay people that you work with to help you perfect your characters. If you can't pay money, work out some kind of an arrangement or an exchange of goods. I've had people that I've worked with, sensitivity readers, where I have been able to offer some of my services as a writer for their work. Find people that you can talk to who are willing to share and will help you perfect your characters. Don't assume, however, that one person or talking to one person will give you insight into everything about that particular character or that particular culture if you're writing outside your own culture. And even writing within your culture. Culture is not a monolith. There are so many layers and so many facets. Your goal as a writer is to bring realness to your characters in what they experience in their everyday lives and what they're going to experience in your novel. This is how you create relatable characters. At the very least, I found it helpful to know these things about your characters. I don't use a detailed checklist for my characters, but I do have a set of questions that I ask myself about my characters and about who they are. And I've spoken about this before, but there is a character workbook that you can download for free from my website that will get you started in the direction and show you a little bit of behind the scenes in how I go about creating characters. At the very least, I've found it helpful to know these things about your characters. As I'm going through this list, know that internal refers to those behaviors that are unobservable, and external refers to tangible and observable behaviors. And I'll give you an example of this. Wanting financial security is an internal goal. Having $1 million in your bank account is an external goal. So for my characters, I go through this list. What are their internal and external goals? What do they want? And then I go through their internal and external motivations. Why do they want it? I go through their internal and external conflicts. Why can't they have what they want? Why can't they achieve their goals? What's keeping them blocked? What is their internal conflict? What is their external conflict? Is someone preventing them from making money? Are they locked away in some closet and they can't get out to go to a job? Or do they have an internal conflict in that they can't work the kind of job, they ethically don't want to take the kind of job that they feel is going to make them that kind of money because they think it's a creepy kind of job to have? Fears. What are they afraid of? What scares them? What keeps them up at night? What worries them the most? How far will they go? And this is a very big part of plot development because you have to know what they'll do to get their goals or what they won't do. So this is where you draw those lines that help you connect the dots in your plot. What will they sacrifice? What will they overcome? What will they do to get where they want to go? The other one, and I love this one the most, the lie they tell themselves and the lie they tell others about themselves. And hat tip to Molly O'Keefe for sharing this bit of wisdom at a conference workshop that I attended years ago, and it has informed my fiction ever since. That's a huge part of all of us. We all lie to ourselves about certain things, about our behaviors or our personality or what we're doing. And then we also misrepresent ourselves to other people. We might be on the outside strong and capable and confident, and on the inside, we are an anxiety-riddled mess. So that's a false front that you're presenting. And those are the kinds of things, if you can get those perfected in your characters, it makes them, again, extremely relatable. I do a timeline for my character for significant events in their lives, up to the point of the novel and how they feel about them. For example, a divorce can be seen as positively or negatively by the character. Directions for this kind of an exercise can be found in Chapter 6 of Eileen Cook's brilliant book, Build Better Characters. And if you can only afford one book, one craft book about building characters, this is the book for you. It has made such a difference in people's response to my characters, and I highly recommend you either own a copy or borrow a copy from the library and read the book. It is so helpful. The other thing I always want to know about, as far as my characters go, are who are the important people in their lives? What are their relationships? Who do they have in their lives? Do they have parents? Do they have sisters or brothers or half-siblings? Do they have children? Are they an only child? All of those things influence how you go about in the world. And those are the things that, again, inform your character's behavior. The books and classes that I recommend for learning how to create characters are, again, Eileen Cook's amazing book about the psychology of backstory and how to use it in writing characters that'll hook your reader. That's Eileen Cook's book. I'm going to link to all of these books in the show notes so you can find them. Deborah Dixon's Goal, Motivation, and Conflict was the very first book I ever read about character development and character arcs. It's not a very long book, but at the heart of any story are your characters' goals, their motivation for achieving those goals, and the obstacles in their way. And this book is a must-have. Either borrow it from the library or own it if you can, but it is an amazing, amazing help to creating characters. Her simple explanations and worksheets are outstanding. A class that also helped me in learning to write characters for books, and this may seem a little out there, was Hal Ackerman's screenwriting class that I took through Creative Live. And it was offered as part of a package. You can look, Creative Live often has sales. You can get into the program. It's not free, but look around for it. You can often find coupons and codes. The best part of Hal's class was his explanation of how characters' behavior drive your plot. And it is so worth the price. I'm going to add a link for the Creative Live in the show notes, and for that class in particular, I found it super helpful. The other books that I often turn to in developing characters when I start to look at what are the lies they tell themselves, lies often revolve around emotional wounds, something that has happened in your life, and then you make up a story to tell yourself to deal with whatever that event was. Some of the best books that I've found about emotional wounds, positive and negative character traits, and conflicts are Angela Ackerman's and Becky Puglisi's Emotional Wound Thesaurus and their Conflict Thesaurus. They have several volumes of those. Again, I'm going to link to those in the comments. I use this collection of books in two. If I'm starting to noodle a book, if I'm really starting to think about it and I'm casting about for plot ideas and conflicts that'll power the story, I thumb through these books for ideas. And if I already have a rough idea of the conflict at the center of my story, I use these books to define how they'll play out. Please don't skip the introductions in these books, because again, they'll explain the concept of how to use each thesaurus. I found these books in the library. Take advantage of your free resources to check them out to decide whether or not you want to own them. I'll link to them below, but again, check out your library first and then decide if the book's for you. And that goes for anything that I recommend on this podcast. Check it out for free first, if you can, through a library, or maybe if you have a friend that's a writer, ask them if you can borrow it. But those are great ways to add to your craft library without spending a lot of money. After reading and rereading all of the books that I've talked about and all of the resources that I've used, and full credit here, I credit Eileen Cook's Build Better Characters for my Goldie win. That was the first time I feel like I really grasped how characters' backstories and the characters themselves' behaviors drive your plot. I've come up with a form that helps you organize the information that I presented in this podcast in what I hope is a helpful way. And again, I will link to that down in the show notes. It's entirely free to get it. Just click on the link below. It'll take you to a landing page. You put in your email address and download that PDF and get started building characters. My final bit of advice as far as character creation goes, and especially for neurodivergent people, is to pay attention to those things that make you back away from a character. If you start to write a character or develop a character and it feels a little sticky or you get a little worried, pay attention to that, because sometimes that resistance is where the gold lies in that character. Write the horrible person. Write the really good person. When you write the horrible person, don't be afraid of going too far. That is what keeps a lot of fiction stuck in the mediocre category. What drives powerful fiction is having characters that make you feel something. Either you love them and wish they would be your best friend or your partner, or you absolutely hate them and you really read hoping that they will get the horrible comeuppance that they need. And think about all of your favorite stories. Why do you go back to them? You go back to them because the characters are like your best friends. They're people you can count on to deliver a really good and entertaining story. Why do you return to favorite authors? Because you can depend upon them to give you characters and stories that keep you turning pages, that they'll excite you, that they make you happy, they make you feel things when you write. And if you don't feel things when you write your characters, your readers are not going to feel anything either. And that's not an original thought about your fiction, but if you're writing a character and you don't feel anything writing that character, you need to review everything you've done, because you should feel something. You either love the character you created or you hate them, but you're going to use them anyway because they're the most excellent antagonist or villain. But use those things, use those feelings that you have around your characters to create characters that will keep your readers coming back. Pay attention, do your work, think the hard things, do the hard things, get your characters nailed down before you go off on your book. And the reason I'm saying this is because when you get to the sticky middle, and you will, or you've run into a roadblock and you don't know where your story is going to go, having fully developed three-dimensional characters is going to help you drive your story forward, because you can back up and say, what would my characters do in this situation? If you get stuck, like, I don't know what they're doing here, or I don't know what should happen here, lean on your characters. Use that work you've done. Use the knowledge of your characters to drive your story forward. And especially for all of you pantsers out there, or people like me that have a trellis that I hang my story on, use your characters. They're a vital part of your story pre-writing. So take the time to do it. It is not wasted time. It is not time that you should be doing something else. Take the time to get to know your characters. Because once you've created fully 3D characters, they still will surprise you, but you'll know that their behaviors are underpinned by things you know about them. You won't have characters doing outrageously ridiculous things that don't make sense, that have readers tossing your book aside and going and picking up another book. So, final word, do the work, enjoy the work, have fun creating your characters. It can be the most fun, even if it feels like the most fraught part of creating a book. Until next time, keep writing. Thanks for tuning in to Writing While Distracted, where we navigate the winding roads of creativity amidst the chaos of distraction. If you have enjoyed this podcast and found it useful, share it and tag me. DM me and let me know what you found most helpful. Please leave a review. It really helps get the podcast in front of more folks. Remember, in the dance between focus and diversion, every stumble is a step closer to mastering the art of writing. Join us next time as we continue to unravel the mysteries of the writer's mind. Until then, keep writing, keep wandering, and embrace the distractions that fuel your creativity. Stay tuned, stay inspired.